Today on the channel, it's return to the Kyle Peterson Top 5, but today we have an explosive Top 5 in honor of the 4th of July. We're counting down my top 5 favorite fireworks.
And the spirit of Ultimate Warrior will run forever!
Welcome everyone, Kyle here, and welcome back to the channel for another edition of the Kyle Peterson Top 5, a Thursday tradition here on the channel. As every single Thursday, I'm counting down my top 5 and occasional top 10 favorites of something, someone, or in this instance, fireworks. Yes, fireworks as we celebrate the 4th of July. If you're watching this, of course, dropping on July 3rd, with July 4th being the 4th of July here for the American audience, I guess, but I think worldwide, we all know about fireworks, and I figured I'd do something different outside of the action figure related videos we usually do on the channel around the 4th of July here. Now, I'm no stranger to fireworks, probably like a lot of other people. Now, unfortunately for me as a kid, most fireworks were illegal in my state, and it all stems back to when my dad was a little kid, and I don't think he was involved in this, but I wouldn't put it past him. I think it was a town or two over from where he grew up. But the whole town had a fireworks thing, and the whole town burned down because some kid lit the firework inside the building, and it took the whole main street out. So, unfortunate turn of events many, many years ago, probably like the 50s or 60s is when that happened, and fireworks banned in my state forever. However, about 2-3 years ago, they did lift that ban because, as we always say here on the channel, I don't care if we're talking the grocery store, Walmart, Target action figures, fireworks, follow the money, Jesse Ventura style. That's what you got to do. There's enough money out there. Money leads to everything. We know how that works by now. You guys are smart enough to know that as well. But fireworks are now legal in my area. However, when I have fondness for fireworks and we would do this countdown, it's going to go back to my childhood playing with fireworks. And of course, at the time, illegal fireworks, smuggling them over the border, the state borders and stuff, getting fireworks from a friend, who's got some from his parents, and he's bootlegging them out to everybody out at school saying, oh, I'll give you a bottle rocket for 25 cents each or whatever it may be. That's how we got our fireworks back in the day on the playground. Maybe you had some similar experiences, and I'll talk about my experiences and why they are my favorites here. But of course, like all the countdowns on the channel, we start at number 5, work our way to number 1. Number 1 being the absolute favorite firework for me personally. And as usual, this is my list, so it's 100% right. It's my list. Your list, though, 100% right as well. Stick it in the comments down below. So without further ado, let's get patriotic. Let's hit it off at number 5. All right, the top fireworks countdown begins at number 5. And number 5 for me goes hand in hand with my childhood, of course, action figures, playing with my action figures. Who do we go to? Where do we go to? Well, we go to the Army tanks. And I don't know the official name for these. And like most fireworks, there's 1,000 different names for things. But it's the old-timey tank. And it rolls a little bit. You light it on fire. It moves a little bit. It shoots some bullets, weapons, missiles, fireballs, whatever you want to call it. Shoots them out of the tank. Now, you can imagine my G.I. Joe loving days as a little kid lining these up outside. No, I did it in my basement, Todd McFarlane. You're right. No, not in the house. No fireworks in the house, folks. But I would get this tank. I would put it outside. Obviously, these were illegal. Really dumb to me, but they were illegal. But I would get the tank out there. Now, a lot of times when I play with my fireworks, playing with the fireworks, I should say, don't play with your fireworks, kids. That's what I'm saying. But these stories happened a long time ago when things were safer. I don't know. But you would line these tanks up on the sidewalk is where I would do it. And, of course, green army men, those are probably still a thing. But back in the day when you're out with your grandma, you're going to the grocery store with her, there would be bags of army men and stuff. And they don't have G.I. Joes at this grocery store. It's a country grocery store. So you take what you can get, of course. And I would grab a lot of those green army men. And they'll come into play later on in this video as well. But I would line up the green army men on the sidewalk, and then I'd light the tank, and it would knock these guys, shoot them down, and things like that. So there was a lot of fun, a lot of nostalgic memories for me with these army tanks firing at those green army men. And then I would dabble in the Joes. However, once again, my grandma would go to some garage sales, we'd get knockoff Joes and stuff. They'd have some of those knockoff Joes there, and I would get some of those because they didn't have real Joes, and it's better than nothing, one of those things. So you'd play with some of those guys, and I would use a lot of those. I would never be using my boy Flint and stuff around these fireworks. Maybe Duke. Yeah, Duke, maybe. But I would put those down there and they get shot off. So number 5 for me is those old school tanks is what comes in at number 5. The countdown carries on to number 4, and number 4 is one of the most classic fireworks of all time. It is, of course, black cats, basically little sticks of dynamite. Now, you would get just single ones, you'd light it, you'd throw it, that would be all she wrote. They would have big packs of them, like, 15 of them, you'd light the end, you'd throw it and, fire off like that. So that was always a lot of fun. And then sometimes you'd get the big round one and you'd lay that whole thing out and it would just go on for an eternity, it felt like. The funnest thing for me, obviously, as a kid was your sister, your friends, you get one of those, you light it, and they're walking by and you throw it at their feet and, oh my gosh, scares them, tricks them, do that kind of stuff. That's where the black cats came into a lot of fun for me and probably a lot of other people. Once again, don't try this at home, kids, but I had a lot of fun with black cats. Those were easy, of course, to smuggle across the border for a lot of friends as well. And it seemed to be one of the most easily accessible firework. And of course, fairly cheap as well. You're not going to be playing around with these $200 fireworks. And those aren't going to be on this list here because you're a little kid. You're not buying $200 fireworks unless you're really lucky, I guess. You're buying some of these more ones and things like black cats, while not expensive, man, they pack a good punch and a lot of fun for, once again, a little kid out there and all the years of having fun throwing those black cats at people, sisters, friends, as a joke. So black cat's going to come in at number 4. The list keeps on going. We're at number 3, the halfway point in my top 5 fireworks countdown. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Check out my other YouTube channel while you're at it. And don't forget Patreon YouTube channel memberships for early access, tons of bonus stuff. You name it, it's over there. Best way to support the channel. Appreciate all the support. But here we are at number 3. And number 3, a time-honored firework that I think everybody's had at least a couple times in their life. What's number 3? It is Roman candles. Now, once again, don't try this at home. But if you were like me, you're supposed to put those Roman candles in the ground. Nah. You're holding those in your hand and you're firing those off like weapons at your buddies. And you're out in the field, you're out in the park, wherever it may be, and you're lighting these things and you're shooting them at each other. Now, obviously, you're not supposed to do it. That's not the way they're supposed to go. But that's the way we did it back in the day. It was dangerous times back in the 80s and 90s. Let me tell you, dangerous times. But Roman candles, very fun. Another one that probably the upper tier of when you throw in the black cats and some of those little ones that are cheaper. That's where things start to get to a different price point. Still not expensive, but a different level of price point I always felt with the Roman candles there. But a lot of times, a lot of fun times having wars, shooting those over at our friends. And that's why Roman candles come in at number 3. Almost at the top spot. We're at the number 2 favorite firework of all time. And a lot of you guys, and hopefully not you gals, hopefully you gals think better of me, but a lot of people are going to say, are you kidding me with this one at number 2? Well, I'm going to give you a little story time with Kyle because number 2 for me, it's old school sparklers. Yes, sparklers. Probably one of the most common, if not the most common firework on the planet. Never outlawed anywhere. Everybody has them. Little kids get them at 3 years old. You light the end. They do one of those kind of things. Yeah, that's fun and all. I took it to an absolute another level when I was a kid. Now, this is where the story time with Kyle comes into. Of course, Tales from Retail is something I do a lot on my podcast. I tell a story from the Tales at Retail, and maybe in a couple of years, I'll probably tell this story again over there because you're not going to believe this, but there's a lot of people that watch the podcast, listen to the podcast, that don't watch this channel. I can't believe it, and vice versa, I am sure. So check out my podcast if you haven't already. Tales from Retail every week, story time with Kyle. But this one really works here for what we're talking about here, fireworks. So a grocery store by my house, which I later started the day I turned 14, I worked at that grocery store. They would have tent sales every single summer. Now, after the 4th of July, fireworks pretty cheap after the 4th of July. Obviously, you start the tent sales out and stuff. They're expensive. As you get closer to the 4th of July, they got to get through the inventory. They sell that stuff off. Well, I was in luck as a little kid. Of course, the grocery store being by my house, huge tent sale. After the 4th of July, all the fireworks. Now, you're looking at fireworks, they're illegal in this area, except for stupid stuff like snaps, snakes, watch out for your concrete driveway, snakes and sparklers especially. But they'd have pallets and pallets of sparklers, and sparklers would come in 12 packs. So you'd have like 10, 12 in a package, and then you'd have 12 of those packages wrapped in like a case. and they were selling these cases of sparklers for 5 cents. So you would have 12 times 12, like 144 sparklers in a pack at a nickel a piece. Now, this is the late 80s, early 90s when this went down. So I'm just like, oh my gosh. And of course, as a little kid, every day I would go to the car wash, I'd hit the coin returns. I'd go to the paper machines, hit the coin returns, and I'd find coins all day long. I'd scour around my house for coins. My dad might give me $5 every once in a while. And then I would take back cans. I lived in areas where they were building new houses all the time. I would go through all these areas, collect cans every day, take them to that grocery store, get money back. That's what I did as a little kid. That's how you hustle and make money as a little kid. But I went absolutely crazy and bought so many sparklers. I remember going on my bicycle back and forth from the grocery store with as many as I could carry and bring back. I had thousands and thousands of sparklers, and the whole time I said, I'm going to grandma's here in a couple of weeks. My grandma, she lived out in the country, out in the middle of nowhere, and I had big plans for these sparklers, huge plans for these sparklers, and I followed through with those plans. So thousands of sparklers, get them, my dad takes me to the country, drops me off at grandma's. I bring all these in. And my grandpa, of course, in the Korean War, he was a welder. He was a guy that loved some fire and loved to do some stuff. And he'd say, Buck, he called me Buck because I was very expensive when I was born. Long story, but he could call me Buck, and good guy. But my grandpa said, hey, take him out there. So, they have a field and burn piles and all that kind of stuff. And they had this huge burn pile back there because when you're out in the country, they burn all their stuff. And that's just what they do. I'm sure they still do that in these days. I don't go to the country much anymore. But he said, go at it. Do whichever you want over in the burn pile. So I lined up all these sparklers. I spent like a full day unboxing all these sparklers and laying them down kind of like a log cabin, building a huge sparkler thing. And then on the perimeter of the sparklers, they came in like cardboard boxes with the sparklers came in. So I lined that in there, and I'm like, I'm going to start the biggest pyro mess ever. And there's no houses. There's nothing. There's nothing to get in the way of things here. I'm going to light this whole place on fire is what I'm going to do. So spent a whole day getting everything lined up. I even had some snakes. I bought a few of those snakes, put those in the pile, open those up, throw those in there, just ready to go. So I had all this stuff set up, thousands of sparklers, snakes, you name it. It's all in there. And then I had all the garbage lined around there. And I said, this is just going to be the biggest sparkler sensation I've ever done in my life. So then, of course, what do? I waited till it got to like dusk. You don't want to get totally dark, but you wanted some dust so you can kind of see what you're doing. And I'm out here by myself. My grandparents not supervising me. They trusted me. They weren't very smart in this instance here. But I got out there and I lit, of course, the sparklers. I lit it all and it went up like crazy. The sparklers are sparkling. That's what they do. And there's just flames everywhere up in the eye, just going like crazy. Thousands and thousands of sparklers here. Unfortunately, it caught fire to the grass. The grass was a little dry. Of course, it's the middle of summer. We're talking like August timeframe here, end of July, August. So the grass a little bit dry. Caught fire to that, and unfortunately, my grandparents had a huge garden right there, and it caught fire into the garden. So it went right into their garden. Oh, I'm just watching this fire go and sparking through there. Luckily, the garden was pretty much done at that point, so they didn't really lose a whole lot, so I wasn't in trouble. And your grandparents love you. They're not going to yell at you, but I had the biggest mess ever. And the worst part of all this, it was fun for like 5 minutes as the sparklers are going, and then a little bit scary for a couple of minutes on the garden there. But the worst part of the whole thing was having to clean up the next morning. My grandpa's, Buck, you better get out there and clean up your sparkler mess. And that's something I never thought about is I'm going to have to pick up all these sparklers. And obviously you got to wait. And the next day it was fine because they're no longer hot. But I think we've all been there. Probably when you're a little kid, you grab a sparkler, you think it's done and you touch it and you burn your finger. We've all been there. But I burned about the whole garden down. Who knows what could have happened there. But I had a lot of fun planning that, buying all these sparklers, having an idea in my head, and seeing it to fruition a couple of weeks later when I did go to my grandparents. So whenever I think of sparklers, I think of that great idea I had, which gotta admit, it was a great idea. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. But that's why sparklers come in at number 2. All right, we've hit the top spot of the countdown. My number 1 favorite firework of all time. Once again, get your list together. Put it in the comments down below. And I hope everybody enjoys their 4th of July if you are celebrating. Are you going to a parade? Are you going to eat some hot dogs? What are you going to do? Sound off in the comments below. But we're at the number 1 spot here. And number 1 is one of the most common fireworks ever once again. But it was one that blew my little mind as a kid. And some of my best memories of a little kid playing with bottle rockets all summer long. And that's what we're talking, bottle rockets here. Bottle rockets, a lot of fun. Obviously, you stick them in the ground, you light them, they shoot off. You just have them just barely in the ground. You can do it out of your hand. I wouldn't recommend it, of course, but they fire up into the sky and then they come back down. Now, a little bit dangerous. You don't want to do those in the city like where I lived. Maybe they end up on a roof, catch on fire or something. A little bit sketchy right there. But once again, going back to those green army men once upon a time, I love to tie those guys with rubber bands up on the bottle rocket and send them up into the sky going crazy. It was a great time. I would do that all the time in my front yard. You know, you'd look around, make sure no neighbors are out and stuff, and I would sit in my front yard and launch them off. Well, one fateful day, and I'll never forget this, I'm sitting there launching it, and all of a sudden I hear, whoop, whoop. It's the 5-0. The 5-0s after Young West Side KP. You know, it was kind of like Compton. I don't know if you guys ever been to Compton. That's kind of like where I grew up. It was very similar, very similar. You know, the 5-0 after you all the time. You guys know how it goes. But I heard that whoop, just a little whoop, and it about scared me to death. Once again, probably 8, 9 years old. Probably 9, because I remember the Oakland A's running wild that year. Running wild that summer. Oh, 1989, never forget Oakland A's. Shout out to Dave Parker, just passed away. Oh, Dave Parker, A's legend. In my eyes, he never played for Pittsburgh. He was just an Oakland A, but I know a lot of people love him from his Pittsburgh time. But they turned on the thing for me, and I about jumped probably 10 miles. I probably jumped over my dad if he would have been there. But I was obviously a little scared because I'd never been in trouble with Johnny Law, you know, so I didn't know what was going on. And the cop comes walking out, and I'm just like, oh, and he's like, you shooting off bottle rockets? And I'm like, maybe. I probably fessed up. I think I was like, yeah. These are illegal, you know, you can go to jail, you can fine you, all that, you know, he gave me the whole tough love type of thing. Long story short, he basically said, cut it out. And little did he know, I was already like 50 packs in, so I was good for the summer after that little scare. But I used to tie my Army guys on there, and I had a lot of fun with them burning kind of. They'd come back down, and I'd find him, and like, oh, he melted his face off. Oh, he melted his body off. Had a lot of fun with that. Now, I would put some of those knockoff Joes every once in a while, but they wouldn't always catch because they were a little heavier, so they wouldn't always get going off the ground. You'd have to have the thicker bottle rockets for that. But I'll never forget that cop coming in there and just scaring me to death. And luckily, he was cool about it. He didn't even say, I need to talk to your dad, and none of that kind of business, too. That's probably what they would do today. They'd say, you 9-year-old kid, you shouldn't be out there with a lighter doing these things. We need to talk to your dad, get your dad involved in this. It was like, tap you on the head. Stop this. If I ever catch you again, I'm throwing you in jail for the rest of your life. I think that's what they would do. They'd try to scare you straight. They can't do that either these days, but I think that's what they would do, and that's what they did back then. But I enjoyed the bottle rockets the most. I remember a lot of days in the summer just going out, I'm going to do a couple bottle rockets. I'd tie my Army guy on there and boo, off to the races with that. A lot of fun with these. Now, like I said, this is my list. I can see a lot of people saying, well, I got the big Johnny Dare one that goes 500 feet in the air and does 50 explosions. Yeah, I didn't have access to that, unfortunately, there. So I made do with what I had, and I made the most fun of what I had. And I'm sure you guys did the same thing. There could be somebody on here that's, you know, sparklers is number one. Maybe snakes is number one for you. Whatever it is, it's right because it's your list at the end of the day. We know how that goes. Speaking of your list, put it in the comments down below. Hopefully everybody has a good 4th of July. Let me know what you're celebrating. Let me know your list. And of course, don't forget the Patreon YouTube channel memberships. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channels. SirPaul64 on the X, _Kyle_Peterson on Threads, Instagram, TikTok. Of course, Kyle Peterson Show, once again, my new podcast, every single Tuesday wherever podcasts are found, with video cast on YouTube. Check it out if you have not already. So for the 4th of July fireworks extravaganza, I am Kyle. See you guys all real soon.
Well, are we gonna dance or are we gonna play?